How you doing?
I'm doing great. Hi, Randy. How are you?
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us for episode 92 of Sales Community's Tech Sales Insights. Really excited to have Kelly Wright on, who is the President and Chief Operating Officer of Gong. Gong is also the Revenue Intelligence sponsor of Sales Community, and certainly is fantastic working with Kelly and her team. By way of background, I think we figured out we only recently met probably end of last year when Gong became a sponsor of Sales Community, but I can totally vouch that Kelly is hands-on, she's responsive, she's authentic. What you see is what you get, and she's definitely very, very respected in the industry. Amazingly enough, she started off as the first salesperson at Tableau back in 2005. And then was EVP of sales when they sold to Salesforce for $15.3 billion in June of 2019. For some unknown reason, she likes work and is still working. But it's been certainly fantastic working with her. And from some of your friends and colleagues, I have a couple great quotes, if it's okay to mention. So from Amit Bendoff, who's the CEO of Gong, he says, Kelly's an amazing leader who started her sales career selling books door to door, which we'll talk about later, and grew to lead and build some of the world's best revenue teams. So nice testimonial there. And then from Carl Eschenbach, who's high-tech Silicon Valley guru, VMware, now Sequoia, says, I am a huge fan of Kelly's. We recruited her to the board of Gong. And then after watching her energy and level of excitement about Gong, I was like, wait, we have our president already in the house. We just need to convert her from our board to our president. She said yes, and Gong is fortunate to have her as our president. I have all the time in the world for Kelly. So, yeah, Carl, yeah, mega.
So that's, wow, that's a nice surprise. Well, first of all, Randy, thank you so much for having me here. For those of you who don't know Randy, in Gong, Randy is a celebrity of sorts because everyone knows Randy, and Randy seems to know everyone on the entire globe. Or if they're in sales, he knows them. So Randy is the person to know. So I'm very excited to be able to have this conversation with you. Also, just one little clarifying thing I was at Tableau for 12 years, but I actually left and I did board work and teaching before the sale to Salesforce. So I wasn't there at that time. So
the company was in cruise control, but with everything that you had put in place. So it was all you.
I don't think I will take credit. It's all about the team. And we'll talk about that a lot today. So much of success comes down to how effective are we as companies, as leaders, as salespeople of building out our team, because that's where it really comes down to.
Yeah, violent agreement. I always say it's the upside down pyramid, right? We work for everybody else. They don't work for us. But anyway, so thanks for that. Kelly's also had been on several boards, but now is on Plum and Lucid, also several advisory and nonprofit boards for interests, reading, yoga, and somehow manages to get in 10,000 steps. Lives in the Seattle area and also a little bit in the Raleigh-Cary area. And she's I know from talking to her and a lot of her posts, definitely very family-centric, has a great husband, Jeff, and three great, I don't know if we're allowed to call them kids anymore as they get older. But also, I have to mention,
they'll always be my kids, although they're not kids anymore.
So. There you go. Awesome. And then I just have to mention for folks watching, so some may know my son, Billy, who got drafted last week. He went to the Kannapolis Cannonballers. So
it's so exciting. Randy, one thing I do know, I know we haven't known each other for so long, but you are a very proud dad, and I'm excited for you and for your son because that's a huge accomplishment. So
thank you. Well, good. And I love my three other kids too, so and proud of them. So all right, so why don't we jump into it here? So your first job actually during college was selling books door to door.
It was. I had a crazy job, Randy, selling educational books door to door. There's a company called Southwestern Company, and they actually have employed college students to run their own business selling educational books door to door. I've been around since 1868. And so my 4 summers when I was in college at Stanford, I everyone around me was doing internships or, lifeguarding or doing like these cool things, going to DC or traveling. And I decided to go cross country and knock on doors for 80 to 100 hours a week, talking to 30 families a day, running my own business, selling educational books door to door. And that was my first foray into sales and first foray into entrepreneurship. And I will say it was extremely foundational of me learning like all these character building traits of what it takes to be successful in business, what it takes to be an effective communicator, and then how to deal with adversity, failure, and also just how to engage with other people. So it was a very important foundation for my career and my life too.
And are they still around now?
Yeah, actually, there's still students that are selling educational books door to door. Now it's not only a US thing, it's a whole global thing. In fact, this past weekend, I hosted a group of students who are selling door to door, and they were from Kazakhstan, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, and from a few other countries. And I hosted them at my house, and they're doing the same thing. Now they actually are selling some logins for online subscriptions for content, but they're also still selling the books, some of the same exact books that I sold years ago.
Wow, that's fantastic. So it's a great referral for any of our friends that have the kids in college that are interested in sales, right? Because you used to have the days, I don't know if they still do the Cutco steak knives. That was a good one, but this book's the new one.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same. I do think for all these salespeople out there, so much of being successful in sales and successful in business is about grit and learning how to put hard work in, learning how to get knocked down and how you stand back up and you keep on going, learning how to persevere. And there is no job in the world that is harder than selling something door to door, because you're sized up in 15 to 30 seconds. Like you have to make a good impression, but also tons of people slam doors in your face. I mean, you're not the most excited, welcome person that comes to their door. People don't like door-to-door vendors. And so learning how to connect, how to build your community, how to actually do your job, and how to show up at the next door and give your best self when someone next door called the police on you or slammed a door on in your face, or had their dog go chase you. It's hard, and it messes with your mind a lot. And learning how to control your attitude, persevere is really important. It also teaches a lot of, in those 4 summers, I sat down with over 12,000 families. And that is a lot of people to learn how to communicate, how to emotionally connect, how to be able to have good listening skills, how to be able to help people solve problems. And that's what really sold me on sales. I loved being able to hear so many different unique perspectives and different people's situations where I could go help think about each of them individually and help them solve their problem. And it got me completely sold in sales and entrepreneurship.
Oh, that's great. So maybe quickly just go through your career, if you don't mind, for us.
Yeah, sure. Well, so I started in college selling books door to door for those 4 summers, and I ended up selling a lot of books. So I ended up doing a fair amount of training. And one of my favorite books when I was selling books door to door was Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. So and it's still one of my favorite books of all time. After I sold books, I ended up going and working for Dale Carnegie Training and doing sales training, selling the sales training, public speaking training, management training. And then because I was doing training for so many companies, oftentimes the companies you're doing training for would offer me a job. And so one of those companies I did training for was Bank of America. After selling books, sold training. After selling training, I went to Bank of America and I sold residential mortgages for a number of years for Bank of America. Then I decided, hey, I want to do entrepreneurship. I need to learn more about general management and strategy and the different functions. So I went to business school at Wharton, did my summer at Wharton at McKinsey. And when I graduated from Wharton, then I did strategy consultant at Bain and moved back to the Bay Area, worked for Bain. And then the whole internet boom happened. And I thought, hey, I want to be part of this. I want to do something entrepreneurial. I want to have an impact. I want to be part of technology and sales. So then I jumped to a company called AtHawk, where I was one of the first salespeople, ran sales, biz dev, client services there, was there on and off while I had my kids. And then after that, I joined as the first salesperson and 10th employee at Tableau 1 month before we launched version 1. So 12-year run at Tableau, then did board work and some other things, teaching, thought leadership. And I joined the board of Gong, and I loved it so much that now I came out of my operational retirement to come back full-time at Gong. And so
awesome. So maybe tell us a little bit more about Gong.
Yeah, so what Gong does is Gong is a company that hopefully many of you use. And what we do is we help to unlock reality to help people and companies reach their full potential. So what Gong does is we provide a reality-based platform to help you understand what's going on in all of your customer conversations and interactions. So, and then we run an autonomous artificial intelligence layer on top of it. So what we help you do is to collect the full truth of everything that's going on in your customer conversations, whether it's on Zoom or web demos or email or in calls, or in Slack, in text, whatever it may be, anything else that's going on in the tech ecosystem, we capture all of this data, and then we're able to provide a lot of diagnosing and understanding of what's happening with that reality so that we can help improve coaching, onboarding of your teams, help to understand what's going on with your competitors, understand what people are saying about your products. So all different groups, marketing, sales, CS, product, who are interested in knowing what's going on in our customer conversations can get that learning from Gong.
Wow, it's amazing. And I've certainly seen that for sure firsthand. And now you've got, tons of customers. Any kind of favorite customer story?
You know what, as I think about the customers, what I love more than even saying the names of who the customers are is how our raving fans, that's what we call our customers, how using Gong makes them individually feel and how it makes them better. So it really comes to this whole mission when we talk about unlocking for helping people reach their full potential. Because what a lot of people say is by using Gong, it helps to understand what the best people are doing, how they can get better. And so, yes, we have these great results of companies get way improved win rates. They can move deals through the cycle faster. They can help inform what's going on with their product roadmap. And that creates a huge amount of value in ROI for companies. But for me personally, it is those users that end up saying, take away every single technology that I use every day. Just do not take away Gong, because on my own personal journey of becoming better and being a better salesperson, being a better listener, being a better communicator, I really rely on Gong. And to me, that's the most fun part, is being able to have that impact on each of the individuals that use our platform.
Yeah, that's amazing for sure. And it seems like kind of a lot of the sales and marketing tech stack companies, if I put you in that broad category, really kind of grew up selling to operations, inside sales, marketing, but now more and more the CRO is in charge of the go-to-market activities and kind of a key decision maker, which is really kind of a new thing for a lot of your sales reps in terms of the sales motion and relationship, right?
Well, if you think about just technology of how it's worked, if you look over the course of the last few decades, all different functions have been disrupted. I mean, we had MarTech, there was FinTech, there's HR tech, and it's really just recently that there's been this whole explosion of sales tech. And it's crazy because most companies have 50% or more of their teams are go-to-market teams that are engaging with the customers, but they've been doing things in the old school way. So what's happening now is you have all these little pockets that came up, and a company like Gong, what we're trying to do is say, especially in today's world where you have remote work, where companies need to do more with less and then get more productivity, how can we actually make it that there's not just all these point solutions? A lot of CROs and CFOs even now are saying, I don't want to have to use 100 different technologies to make my team successful.
Right.
So what can we do to make our sales team more effective, where they can stay in one platform and be able to know what's going on with their leads, know what's going on with their customers, be more effective in their pipeline, leverage and understand and have truth and reality and conviction of what's going on with your forecast, and then also being able to give some prescriptive guidance that helps people save time on what to do next. That's really what we're trying to do. So what has happened, Randy, back to your question, is yes, Gong can help with a lot of those sales ops, sales enablement type of pieces that the tech stack does. But now we're also aligning much more to VP of sales, chief revenue officers, chief marketing officers that want to know what is truly happening and what systemically across the entire system can we do to go make people much more effective. It's a more holistic approach.
Absolutely. And then kind of tied into that is, from a competitive landscape, I mean, there's, hundreds or thousands of companies, if you want to call it, in that sales tech stack. It almost reminds me back to the old days. Most people watching probably wouldn't remember, but, Oracle was one of several, including Sybase and Informix and PeopleSoft, and eventually kind of all those became one. How do you see the competitive landscape evolving?
I mean, the competitive landscape is definitely, there's tons of players and it's cluttered and it's evolving. I think what's happening is you have all these different point solutions that are out there. There's like conversation intelligence, and then there's forecasting, and then there's prospecting and deal management and contacts and all these different things. But what is happening is where it's going to be most productive for companies is to be able to tie those different work streams into the data and the facts of what's really happening. So Gong has come up with this from a very different approach of rather just kind of munging together all these disparate functions that are really important, saying first, we're going to spend time on creating this data platform on the base, because you can only know, like, conversation intelligence is only as good if like that works with recording your calls. But we all know roughly 80% of the interactions don't happen in calls. They happen over emails or Slack.
Right.
So if you only get a slice of the data, it's only going to tell you a slice of the story. So first, you have to have a comprehensive view of what's going on with the data. And that's really been Gong's approach. We're going to be much more comprehensive of creating this foundational platform and then make that extensible so we can have, with Gong Collective, over 100 different sales tech platforms that can integrate into it to help augment and make that much more juicy of what is really happening. But as we all know, you can have all the data in the world, and if you don't do anything with that data, it's just like captured and replaced. It doesn't matter. So once you have that data, then it is, how can you diagnose and understand what's going on to serve up really meaningful insights? And Gong spends a lot of time on that. And then there's a next piece, which is kind of the next generation of sales tech. I think where we'll all see the world trying to go is, well, if I've collected the data and then I'm serving up insights of the data, all that is great too. But how now can I save my team's time to give them actionable insights that inform them what to do next, so they don't even have to worry about it? And it helps make things less manual, much more streamlined, and bringing those autonomous systems just to make those high talented people that you have more effective and efficient. And we're trying to play at that capture level, at the understand level, and then also actionable insights on what to do next. So we have a different approach of not just little pieces of it, but all of it holistically in a platform type way.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's amazing. I think back to when I was in the operating jobs. I mean, you're lucky if you can get the data. I used to call it, look in the rearview mirror. Like, I don't care what already happened. I want to know what's going to happen, right? And just all this resource, it's almost cheating. But yeah, it's juicy, as you said. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge I guess right before you joined, but the market must have known you were joining, the $250 million raise June of last year at a $7.25 billion valuation. So that certainly is a great thing, and it's better than a sharp stick in the eye. So fantastic there. So what about, maybe last question on Gong, from a culture perspective with Gong, if you were to be in the elevator with a recruit, kind of what would you say to that recruit about why they should work at Gong?
At Gong, I think although we are super committed to creating an amazing product and a very scalable platform that works well for our customers and raving fans, we're equally as focused as creating one of the most desired places to work. So we operate in a way where everyone's rallying around this mission that I mentioned, and also putting our operating principles really at the core of everything we do. Number one operating principles: create raving fans. We win as a team. We favor the long term. We talk about challenging conventional wisdom, that you see that all the time with our marketing team in terms of, our logo is purple and pink, and we have a dog in our branding. And so all these different things really help to shape how our culture works. But as you put it all really in the center, it is creating a place where individuals can really thrive and grow and bring their authentic and diverse self to work and be able to really thrive that way. So I like to think about Gong as being a people-centric organization, where so many companies today, especially when the economy and macro is tough, are all talking about operational efficiency, operational effectiveness. Of course, that's really important, but it really all comes down to the people and the culture first. And that's why I created this whole thought leadership brand, which is called Culture-Driven Sales. Oftentimes people talk about sales-driven culture, where it's driven by the sales and it's driven by the productivity and operational principles, where I think it's actually the inverse. It's culture-driven sales. If you have a strong mission, strong culture, strong operating principles, strong people-first approach, then you're going to be able to get the best people and help to provide an environment where it's a positive place to work, where you can get the most out of those people because they're empowered. And then that in turn will drive more sales. So I think culture drives sales instead of the
Absolutely.
other way around.
And very much related to our title topic, culture-driven sales. You're actually the founder of Culture-Driven Sales. So maybe explain that, because they go hand in hand.
Yeah, well, Randy, an interesting thing. So I spent 12 years at Tableau, started as first salesperson, my title was EVP of sales, but effectively chief revenue officer there for 12 years. And I was growing into roles that I had never, ever, staying in the role, but I had never done that before. Everything I was doing was always bigger and different. So when I finished that chapter and I decided, and the reason I decided I wanted to do board work is my youngest was going into high school and I wanted to be able to be more present and engaged before I was an empty nester. So I made the decision to step away from operational work and do some board work. And I wanted to do board work, advising, and teach a course. And I wasn't sure, hey, I know I want to teach something about sales, but I'm not sure what is the best thing to teach. And I know I want to do board work, but how can I add the most value for CEOs and for companies? So what I did in that first year is I sat down with the whole slew of hyper growth tech CEOs, some later stage and some non-tech, but in the first year, around 85 CEOs. And over the course of about 2 years, I sat down with about 130 founders and CEOs, asking them what was the biggest challenge that they had in their sales and go-to-market. And then that led to me being on these boards, being advising, but it also helped me to create this course. And what I found was many companies were asking, well, what do I do when sales and marketing aren't aligned? What do I do with sales is trying to sell something that's not what product is building? Or how do I go scale? What are the operational principles of what I need to do? And one of the things we were really clear on at Tableau was we had this really clear mission that everyone was super aligned on. And we had these operating principles that really fueled how we hired, how we interacted with our customers, how we performance managed, how we build the culture in-house. And what I realized in talking to these 130 CEOs is that wasn't top of mind for everyone. They were more thinking like, operationally, how do I set up a comp plan? How do I do my org structure? What tools should I use? How do I go international? And so what I realized is I started asking people, well, what is your mission? And I'd realized I'd asked 5 execs at a company: CEO, co-founder, CRO, CFO, CHRO, and and everyone got a different answer. And so basically what I realized here is we need to go to the top. How can we be intentional about setting up what that mission is, setting up those operating principles, and then figuring out how do we actually do all of the sales plays and sales motions out of that. So that's where it comes to culture-driven sales. With that, I launched my thought leadership platform. I started teaching a class, which I created at University of Washington at the Foster School of Business. And then that is a lot of how I was helping all these boards of how to start thinking about building a scalable, sustainable, high culture, high performing sales and go-to-market organization.
Wow, that's great. Hey, I should have mentioned before, so for those watching along or listening, you can see us or hear us. We cannot see you, obviously, but certainly feel free to ask any questions or make any comments. You can post them, and we have Tucker behind the scenes able to pull those up. And we're very honored to have Kelly Wright, the President and Chief Operating Officer, with us today from Gong. So getting back to how do you hire for culture?
That's a great question. And it's very top of mind right now, because the interesting thing is when we're in this huge talent war, we're very, very tight labor market, and people are all trying to get those high performing people. And those top people, what they want is they want to be able to work at a place where they are that they feel part of that purpose. It comes back to what we were talking about a few moments ago, Randy, about mission is really important to make sure the whole company understands the purpose and their why. This is a really important way to determine who wants to work for you, who not. Are they passionate about that why? Do they care? So that's the first. The second is making sure that we're asking the right questions in the interview process that are teasing out not only experience and resume, but also how they align with the right behavioral traits that are core to your culture and your operating principle. And as we talk about building a high performance culture, it's not just managing who is currently on the team, but how are you going to continue to add people and interview for people, making sure they align with your purpose and your why, and making sure that they are in the same vein of what all your operating principles and culture are.
Yeah. So I guess the devil's in the detail, though, of kind of not setting up the person, but asking kind of more experiential questions about the background, because everybody's going to say, oh, yeah, I'm totally bought into that mission. And yeah, your culture I love. So there's probably times where you thought you hired correctly for culture, but then, not that the person misled, but just kind of then there just wasn't a fit. And do the people kind of vote with their feet, or do you have to kind of proactively manage that?
Well, I think there's two things, Randy, that you're talking. One is how do you actually tease that out more in the interview process? And the second is if someone's not showing up that way, what do you do internally? I think the first piece is be really, really thoughtful in your interview process to make sure everyone involved in interviewing understands how to interview for behavioral traits. And so there's some key questions that I like to ask. I mean, everyone has the questions that they ask, but most people spend too much time, especially as they scale, on the experience and resume. But some of the things are like questions that I like to ask. If I was a fly on the wall in last year's annual performance review, what would I hear were your strengths, and what's your superpower? And then what are your development and growth areas? And you can understand, even just from a question like that, are people self-aware of their development areas? Are they candid in how they communicate?
Yeah.
Are they, like, you learn so much from that question. Another question I like to ask is just, I can even try it with you, Randy. Like, who in the world, Randy, knows you the best? It might be a friend, a spouse, a partner, a kid, someone you work with. Who knows you best?
Yep. My wife, Janet.
Okay. Well, Randy, how would your wife describe you?
We're turning the
I
tables
know,
on
Randy,
here.
we don't want to go there now. But Randy's like, wait, how did I get on the hot seat? But you know what? That is a fantastic
Yeah,
question to ask, because you strip away all the professional things and be able to find out at the core, who is this person? What is their real authentic self? And how do they describe it? And those are the kind of questions that you really want to ask to be. And then the other question is, why do you want to work here? Why
right.
are you interested in this company and this time and what we do in this role? And sometimes people are like, oh, I want to join a rocket ship that's growing really fast. It's not a good reason to join, because we know people that are most successful, they align tightly with the purpose, and they actually have passion, and they get a fire in their belly by having an impact on whatever your why is. And so they need to understand why they care about that why. And so
Yeah.
those are some things just to help the audience of questions that you could ask that align on the first question. And if you want, we can go to the second question of, what if later on you realize someone is not the right fit? What do you do? But that's a different approach.
Yeah, I mean, philosophically, I know that performance reviews are the kind of the how it gets kind of put in stone. But I was always a fan of the feedback should be real time. And if I, as a lead call with somebody, ask the manager, okay, what are the strengths, but what are the things a person needs to work on? And then manager would always rattle things off. And then when I was at windshield time in the car, also what are the things that you're discussing with Kelly that you should be working on or improving? And more times than not, it might be one thing or it's nothing. And to me, that's the fault of the manager. The individual should always be asking and doing that, but you have to promote a culture where there is that open discussion. The manager's having that daily, weekly discussion with the individual, but then the individual's also cultivating it, saying, hey, I just heard Randy or I just heard Kelly say, hey, we should be getting feedback. You haven't given me any feedback. Give me feedback.
Yeah, you just talked about a lot there. We have a process here at Gong called Grow at Gong. And oftentimes what happens is these career conversations, and are someone the right fit? And for those real great talent who are going to stay and grow and develop, it's a two-way conversation. So many times it is a manager talking and giving feedback to their direct report. But it's the accountability and ownership of the individual employee, regardless of the level. But we also have to make sure as leaders that we're having a two-way conversation, so we know what it is that motivates our people, what gets them excited, where do they want to go next in their career? Because a lot of our job as leaders and managers is to help those people on our team accomplish what it is that they want to do. And so we need to really understand what it is that they want, what are their goals, what are their career aspirations, and how can we help to set them up? So that's on the career side. On the culture side, though, when we talk about performance management, if someone is like not doing something exactly right in their role, they're a salesperson and they're selling a lot, but they're not quite hitting quota because of some of the inputs that they're doing. That's something maybe we can manage to, hopefully we can manage to. But if someone is not operating in accordance with your operating principle, they're showing up with too much ego, they're not winning as a team, they're not a good communicator, they're being rude, people feel uncomfortable working with them. Like, those are things we need to really tightly manage with performance, because that can be a cancer in an organization if people are not operating according to your values and your culture. And I think we need to be much more firm of not allowing those. Like, there's just no excuse for showing up in a way where it's not creating a good place to work.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And a lot of times I'm sure you found people, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. You have to coach and improve, as opposed to, hey, you're not doing it, you're gone. But more times than not, people say, well, I've never been told that. I've never received the feedback before. So a lot of times people appreciate that. And I always find longer discussion, but kind of the top performers, the ones where you can really, I think get the most leverage. You want to help and coach everybody. But if you can coach up those top performers a little bit more, the company's going to get a lot more out of it. You're going to have great retention from those people, because they're saying, wow, nobody wanted to coach me before because I was always a top performer, but I'm a top performer and I'm getting coached. And by the way, I'm going to have other top performers come here. So that's a whole mouthful of different things, but I'll move on because I know you could talk about it for an hour. So you last week, I think, spoke to a Battery Ventures Sales Summit group, I think with over 100 sales and go-to-market executives. Were there any kind of surprising questions or maybe different tones that you got kind of from the audience? I'm sure you had your talking about all your everything great that you can always talk about. Any nuances?
You know, two things there. First is I feel really energized being able to be with a whole bunch of top performers who have chosen sales, entrepreneurship, and tech. Well, for me, tech, but even just sales and entrepreneurship and building business as their chosen career. It's so empowering and inspiring to be with people who just want to talk about how to get better and how to sell more and how to engage our customers more. So we haven't done much of that in the last couple of years of being able to have those in-person get-togethers. I think, you know, one of the things that I talked about that we've talked about a bit already, Randy, that seemed to resonate in the discussion, because we were talking about how to create and sustain high-performing and winning teams. Here's my perspective on it. And we've talked about people a lot. People oftentimes are asking me, what should I focus on? Hey, Kelly, what should we focus on as my top priority, my top 3 priorities? And depending on stage or depending on company or depending on industry, people think that the answers are going to be different. What should I do when I'm 0 to 10 million? What should I do when I'm about to go public? What should I do when I'm a public company and I'm launching a new product? What about when I go global? What about when times get tough and I need to focus on operational efficiency? Everyone always seems to believe I'm going to have a different set of priorities depending on what is going on. And for me personally, my priorities, my top 3 priorities have always been the same, regardless of company, regardless of what board, regardless of stage, regardless of situation. And in fact, Randy, my top 3 will always in perpetuity be the same. So these are what my top 3 are. Regardless of what's happening, what is priority number 1? It's people. What board, regardless of stage. Now hear me in back. Okay, so I'll go back. What are top 3 priorities? Priority number 1 is people.
Yeah. Always.
Priority number 2 is people. And what is priority number 3?
People.
It's people. You got it, Randy. Because, you know, it's people who actually build your product and services. It's people who engage with your customers and sell to your customers and support your customers. It's people who do all the marketing. It's people who do the back office. It's people who hire the other people on your team. And then it's people who manage those people and talent on your team. It's people who make decisions. So you could have the most amazing product in the right time with the right opportunity. And if you have the wrong people, it's going to be super challenging. But if you have the right people, even if you make some mistakes, whichever we all will, those people will get you through it. And so I think it's really important, even in this day and age, and this is what we were talking about last week at the summit, when it's remote work and there's a tough economy and we're all trying to build things and have ups and downs, where should our focus be? It needs to be on our people, because they're the ones who are going to get us through. And that comes to create great culture, bring great people, and it's people that build great companies.
Absolutely. And speaking of people, you had some cool events, looks like the past couple of weeks. You had a Gong summer party in San Francisco last week, so that must have been great bringing everybody together.
It was fun. You know, we've been remote for a number of years, and just a couple months ago, we opened up 3 different hub offices in the United States: San Francisco, Chicago, and Atlanta. We also have an office in Dublin and in Tel Aviv. Now it is great to be able to bring those people together live in real person to be able to interact.
That's awesome. And then Seattle, you have a Gong Lounge. I saw. What's that?
So the lounges, you know, they're in COVID, people ended up popping up and hiring in all different places. So there's these clusters of people that work everywhere that aren't close to one of the offices. but they still want to be able to have that live in-person interaction. So what we've done is we've done these pop-up lounges, and these pop-up lounges, we rent out a restaurant or a space, and it has good Wi-Fi. We provide food. We tell everyone to come, and it's like a temporary one-day office where everyone can get together, be able to have in-person interaction, have some fun together, have some social time, but still be able to be productive and work. So we just had a lounge here in Seattle, which was really fun.
Oh, that's awesome. So for those watching, don't be shy. Feel free to comment, ask any questions. You got an expert in Kelly here in several different areas I'm sure you've seen so far. So you should be able to just post that on LinkedIn. So speaking of kind of authenticity, so you had a recent note that went out to, I think, 100,000 customers and had a little mistake in it. And it's amazing how well you handled that.
Yeah, well, we did something, everyone makes mistakes, right? And so we had a little blunder here at Gong, or maybe it was a bigger blunder. It was just an email. And when you have email and you do first name, it has first name, and you have to get rid of where it says first name and put the name in. Well, it actually still had the F, and then it had first name. So we sent out over 100,000 emails, and it would come to someone like me and say, hi, F Kelly. And it was super embarrassing because we ended up having this blunder where people were like, oh, something got wrong with my name. And I ended up, it was an automatic email, but I ended up signing it. It was from me. And, when I first saw that went out, first intent is, oh, that's nerve-wracking. That's embarrassing, makes us not look professional. And then just realized, what? Stuff happens. We're going to make mistakes. And so much of it with our internal teams and with our customers is, how do we show up and how do we deal with the mistake is almost more important than what the mistake was. And I think with that, we had a bit of humor. We followed up with our customers, but it also was a learning for our whole team of, we need to just be able to give grace when people make mistakes. It's going to happen. I have made more mistakes than, we could spend hours and days and weeks and years talking about all the mistakes I've made. And it's best just to address it, confront it, learn from it, and then do better next time. And how we show up is important.
Absolutely. And I think you have a 4-step plan that you posted, which I love, which is own it, assess the damage, make it right, and learn and grow. I mean, that's great. And from a culture perspective, having people, it's on the one hand serious, but that you're able to, learn from it and maybe joke about it a little bit. And probably in some customer situations, it probably even, some could say, hey, maybe they did that on purpose just to kind of, set the stage. But not saying that, but, probably helped a lot of customer situations as well, right? Where they say, wow, this is a great company. They are real. And I don't know if I would have handled it that way.
I think people love just having authenticity and truth in how people are reacting, just to realize that they're dealing with real people, not just companies, and we're not just bots, and people are real and vulnerable, and own it. If you make a mistake, you own it. So much of it wasn't only how we reacted to the mistake, it was that authenticity. And companies don't sell to companies. People sell to people, and people buy from people. And so it's making sure that we have this people connection as we interact and sell companies, sell customers, interact with them, support them. And that's really important.
Awesome. Great. All right. We have a question from LinkedIn user. Thank you, LinkedIn user. They say, how do you see the collaboration overlap between sales and customer success management to manage the overall global customer relationship? So be kind of, sales on the one hand, kind of, getting the customer, and then probably what's the handoff on the customer success team or staying with the sales team. And maybe it varies by customer segment.
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge topic. It's hard to do justice to it in just a couple of minutes. But most companies, because they have one team that's selling and then another team with customer success, I think that it's really important for us as companies to understand the entire customer journey. So it's not just there's sales, that's one function, and then they go to post sales, because everything is a continual loop. Because we sell, we make them successful, they come back and they buy more. Then we support them. Then maybe they buy another product, and then we support them. And so understanding how we can actually help best support that customer throughout the entire journey of when they come on, how they adopt our product, how they expand the product, how they end up using the product. So that's one hook that we need to do. I think second is being able to make sure we have really tight handoffs and clear roles and responsibility, because where it can get confusing is if there's an account manager on the sales side that feels that they're the champion and they own the customer, and then there's a CSM who thinks that they own the customer, it can be really unclear to the customer of where do I go for what. And especially as companies end up, they have services and they have support and they have CS and then they have sales and then they have, some community and then they have education. It can be really confusing. So that's another reason why it's really important to just understand from the customer standpoint, how are we helping to proactively move them through that journey so it's seamless and creating a really positive experience for the customer.
Yeah, great.
So we could have a whole podcast to unpack that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I mean, customer success, that's a whole nother kind of sales tech stack too, technology and everything else here.
Although Gong plays there too. Lots of customers, over 30% of our users are outside of sales, and a lot of them are in CS, marketing, support, product as well. So
awesome. Great plug. So on the kind of family side, if it's okay to say, you and Jeff celebrated your 25th anniversary in Vietnam.
We did. And I took 2 weeks off. And I think one important thing for us all to remember is we all go really, really hard and we're all working a ton. And it's important to take time for yourself to recharge, to be able to reconnect with your family, and that's important to you. It's also really important to be able to set the right example for our teams, that we don't have to be on all of the time. So I went to Vietnam for almost 2 weeks. I brought my phone and my iPad and I left my computer at home. It's actually one of the first times I've ever done that with my computer. I felt like if I had my computer, it's too easy to get grabbed in. So we were able to really have a fantastic vacation and celebrate our 25th and enjoy Vietnam. And I knew that there's people here at the team that could continue to get the work done. I didn't need to be on all the time.
Excellent. That's great. And what about, depending upon the industries, some would say maybe tough economic times, any sales tips that you would give or give your team?
Yeah, definitely some teams. I think when the going gets tough, some companies tend to grasp at all different straws. Hey, things are getting harder, so I'm going to try 100 different things. That's completely the wrong approach of what to do.
Right.
When time gets hard, we have to have very, very tight focus. Pick the 2, 3, 4 things, maybe even one thing that you do extremely well, and focus and know where you're going to put all your eggs in one basket, and know how to put that focus, because you can't do a ton of things well, especially when you're trying to do more with less. That's the first. The second is know the truth and reality of what's happening. What happens is when people are trying to go fast and do more with less, they tend to kind of scramble and have some knee-jerk reactions. This is a time to really understand what the data is saying, what's the reality of what's happening, and then be able to make data-driven decisions on where you should prioritize and focus.
Excellent. I used to, again, I'm old school, a lot of my things, but where you have reps going off in wrong areas, do the old school kind of green zone, yellow zone, red zone, just focus in the green. And then somebody calls in selling this, I don't know, that's the yellow zone, that's the red zone, don't go there.
Yeah, focus.
Starting to get some questions here. So from Greg, I know for me, I use a number of RevOps tools and they're all integrated into Salesforce. Many of the tools I use have overlap, but have areas where they're unique and strong. How do you see the market morphing and consolidating to eliminate many of these point tools?
Oh,
that's a layup.
Yeah, Greg, that's a great question. Well, what's happening is, especially now when macro times are tougher, you're having even CFOs and IT are saying, we need to optimize the tech stack. We don't want to have all these different point solutions. We want to be able to manage from a financial standpoint, but also even more importantly, to not have our teams internally having to use a whole bunch of different technologies. So I think you will absolutely start seeing a lot more consolidation. And my sense is that in our sense here at Gong, is who's going to win in that consolidation are those that actually have the data at the center that are going to make all of these different tools operate the best. And that's why we're kind of starting to sound like broken record, but Gong is really focusing on creating this extensible, comprehensive data platform. Because, for instance, forecasting, anyone can go put forecasting in a spreadsheet, but if I want to know is my forecast real, I want to dive into the deal and understand it's happening. Anyone can talk about, hey, we're going to put some templates out for sales reps, but what if you could use AI and say, hey, the words that it say in the templates should actually surface what are the top priorities that your customers are talking about, and just auto-populate that through your insights. All of this is going to end up coming back to a comprehensive platform that taps into the data. And then when we start talking about the next generation of data, is being able to have actionable insights and AI on that data. You need to, one, have the data, but then it's going to matter of who actually has the most robust artificial intelligence and machine learning. And a lot of these tools are point solution. They came from the tool solution point first, instead of from AI at the center first. And so those that you're going to see taking more share are going to be those that have the data and those that actually have real true technology that was from the beginning all about the AI.
Great. Thanks, Greg. And from Timothy, Gong has been instrumental to some of our clients for coaching, selling, etc. I'm curious if any of your customers are using the data from Gong for marketing insights, for example, campaign ideas coming from top competitors, consistent challenges mentioned in recorded conversations, etc.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if he goes by Tim or Timothy, but this is one of the misconceptions I think people have about Gong, because so many companies are using Gong for coaching and selling and onboarding and ramping, and that's a great use case, and absolutely people should be using for that. But where it gets even more interesting is where you have these insights that can help you to really learn what's going on in your business. So marketing insights, competitive insights. For instance, we just launched a few weeks back an economic pulse, and this is a macroeconomic risk tracker where we've pulled a whole bunch of these words: recession, layoff, hiring freeze, spending freeze, all these words, that recession, that talk about where there might be a slowdown, and put it into a tracker to then be able to say, are your customers talking about these macroeconomic risks? When they do, is it helping deals? Is it not? Is it slowing your deals down? And what we have found is actually when they mention it, in some cases, for some companies, the company's actually selling more software. It's not always a bad thing. So how to train your sales team of how to know what they're talking about, and then how to pivot your playbook and your messaging and your marketing to be able to address that in the best way. And this is with the trackers and the smart trackers. It all comes back to that robust artificial intelligence to provide these insights. And this is another thing. As we think about the consolidation of the sales tech stack, it's not only going to be what does the tool do, like what's the tactical thing do? It's going to be what insights does it serve up that provides prescriptive guidance on what to do next and how the company should pivot. And that's where really Gong, our product team, is focusing its time.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Timothy or Tim, and Greg chimed back in to say thank you. Great session. So time flies when you're having fun. Kelly, you've been fantastic. Really appreciate it. For those watching, feel free to tell others. Tucker behind the scenes posts it everywhere, so you can see it there. And certainly for those that are considering improving in the sales side, in revenue intelligence, and a lot of other areas in the sales stack, definitely look at Gong. And for those that are members of Sales Community, thank you very much. For those that are not, we actually have a summer free special going on, which is salescommunity.com/free. And for any Gong friends, you can also get a free link at salescommunity.com/Gong. And Johnny Chan, who's one of yours, I believe, says, thanks, Randy and Kelly. Great session. No question from Johnny, though, I guess. But anyways, probably too busy
When
multitasking.
people have any other questions, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. We're all in this together. Love to hear from you. And Randy, thank you again for all that you do for the sales community. I think you just have fostered such an incredible network. And I feel very honored and privileged to have been a part of the conversation today. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Larry chimes in and says, fantastic session. So next week we have episode number 93. Matt Handler, who's the president and COO at CoreLogic. So that should be a great session as well. So everybody have a great rest of day and great rest of week. And Kelly, thank you so very much.
Thank you. Till next time.